Access ships with many built-in functions that you can use to modify the data that is stored in your data tables. Occasionally, however, these won't be enough to calculate exactly what you need, or perhaps you just want to save a complex calculation to use it over and over again. In these cases, you'll want to create your own custom functions in Visual Basic. To get started with this, we'll need to create a new module by going to the Create tab, and over here on the far right, I'll click on Module. That'll open it up in Visual Basic. Now, Visual Basic is where we're going to type any programming code that we have in our database. Over here on the left, I'm going to give my module a new name. By default, it comes in as Module 1. So in this Properties box, I'm going to type in the name is going to be My Functions, and press Enter. If you don't see the Properties box, you just want to come up here to the toolbar and press this button here to reveal the Properties window. Next, we're going to come into this text box that is open here and start typing in our functions. I'm going to start by typing in the words public function. The words public function tells Access this function will be available to forms and queries outside of this particular module. If I don't include the word public, then this function will only be useful inside of this code module. Next, we're going to put in the name of our function. In this case, I want to create a function that will calculate age given a birth date. So I'm going to type in the name of my function is age, and I'm going to open up a parentheses. Now inside of the parentheses, we're going to put any arguments that the function needs in order to operate. So in order to operate this age function, we need to provide it with a date of birth, and I'll abbreviate that with DOB. Next, we need to tell Access which type of data the date of birth will be. I'm going to say as date, so it'll know that it'll expect the date of birth to be a date format. I'll finish off this function declaration by closing it with a parentheses, and then I'll press Enter. And you'll see that Access adds this end function line to the bottom. Now inside of the public function and end function lines, we're going to put all of the code that'll modify our data. In this case, it's a pretty simple calculation. It's just going to be age is equal to, and in parentheses, I'm going to put in the date. This is a function that's internal to Access that'll return today's date. And I'm going to go ahead and subtract the date of birth from today's date. That'll give us the number of days since the date of birth until today. Then I'm going to divide this number by 365.25. This is the number of days in an average year. Finally, I want to round this to a whole number. So I'm going to wrap this whole calculation inside of another function called int. This will drop off any remainder and return just a whole number. So the age is going to be equal to the integer of the date minus the date of birth divided by 365.25. Let's go ahead and test out our function. I'm going to press Ctrl-G on my keyboard to bring up a new window at the bottom of my screen. This is called the immediate window, and we can type in text here. We can go ahead and run our function by typing in a question mark and saying age, and then what date of birth we want to apply this to. I'll go ahead and just put in my own birth date of pound 08/28/1979. Finish it with a pound sign. I'm wrapping this date inside of the pound symbols to make sure that Access understands that this is a date and not a formula 8 divided by 28 divided by 1979. I'm going to finish it with a closing parenthesis and press Enter to run that function. And it returns the answer of 34, and that's exactly how old I am today. Let's go ahead and write another function up here. I'm going to come back up here into my text field, and I'm going to enter down a few lines, and we're going to enter in a new public function. So I'll start with public function. This time, we're going to create a function that'll convert square feet into square meters. Inside of our Kinetico database, we have our product listing, and each of our products has a field called footprint that lists the square footage or the size of our product. I also want to create this function here that'll convert that square footage into square meters. So let's go ahead and write out this function. The function name is going to be SQ meter, and then open parentheses. The value or argument that we're going to supply is the square footage. So I'll type it in as SQFEET. The type of data is going to be a double, so I'll type it as double. This is the type that Access will expect for the square footage. I'll go ahead and close this function with the parenthesis and press Enter, and Access automatically adds the end function line. Now we just need to tell Access how to modify our data. I'm going to type in SQ meter is equal to, and in parentheses, the SQ feet multiplied by the conversion factor, which is 0.092903. Go ahead and close that with a closing parenthesis, and my function is done. Let's go ahead and test it out in the immediate window. I'll click down here on the bottom and I'll type a question mark. The function is sq_meter, and I'll apply that to the square footage of 10. I'll go ahead and press enter, and Access tells me that 10 square feet is equivalent to almost 1 full square meter. So that's a quick introduction to how you can begin to create custom functions in Visual Basic. Let's continue working with these functions back in the Kinetico database in the next movie.